Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and if I could encourage people to be seated so we can start on time. Welcome, and compared to yesterday morning, we would classify this morning's weather as balmy, well done Canberra weather. We're starting this morning's proceedings with a presentation from the Primary Concert Choir from the ACT Public Schools, which will be conducted by Catherine Finlayson. I did some search last night, Catherine. It is an extension opportunity for students in ACT schools. The choir provides students, this wonderful collection we have in front of us, to work together in a supportive and fun environment. Students in the choir will have the opportunity to develop their skills in musicianship, breathing, phrasing, vocal production, and performance, while learning a range of repertoire, including harmony parts. So I don't know what your biggest audience is, but I think this might be doing pretty well. All the best, kids. Over to you, Catherine. That was just a fantastic way to start the day. So, Catherine and your choristers and Nada and whatever, thank you so much. And if we could show our appreciation once again. I'd now like to welcome on your behalf Auntie Agnes Shea, a member of the Ngunnawal United Ngunnawal Elders Council, who is going to welcome us to Ngunnawal country. Auntie Agnes. And we have a dignitary here this morning with Auntie Agnes. I said the last time I saw Auntie Agnes was on the 26th of January at Australia Day on the shores of Lake Burley Griffin with Mr Abbott, and they were welcoming new citizens to Australia for the citizenship ceremony, and Auntie Agnes gave the welcome on that day. We're talking high-profile Auntie here.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are we all this morning on one of Canberra's lovely fresh mornings? I'm Auntie Agnes Shea, and I'm one of the Ngunnawal elders. Actually, I'm the oldest Ngunnawal elder living in Canberra and the region. And on behalf of my daughter, who's Annette, she's with me today, and the other Ngunnawal people, thank you all. I thank the organisation for inviting me here today to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. I'd like to start off by acknowledging our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and I extend that welcome to all elders, regardless of your cultures. Also, a special welcome to those who've joined us today for the first time, and those who've been here before, welcome back. And also, I'd like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island friends who may have joined us here today. I'll say a bit about the conference first. In 2013, the Conference Organising Committee contacted the United Ngunnawal Elders Council and asked permission to use the words Dingi and Wagu in their conference title. The use of the words Ningi means look, and Wagu meaning why are just one of the ways that this conference reflects the Aboriginal culture of Canberra. I'm also pleased to see the beautiful artwork created by Lee Branson that tells the story of education in Canberra. Lee has focused on nurturing curiosity for students and placed that firmly in the land. Aboriginal people have told stories and nurtured curiosity in our young people for as long as we have been on this land. It is wonderful to see how you as teachers and are coming here to be part of that journey for the ongoing future of our beautiful country. I wish you all the well as you join with each other on the pathway of nurturing curiosity, inquiring, and for yourselves, and then in your schools next semester. So thank you all again. I hope that today will be very successful. And for those who've travelled here, when it's time for you to travel back home to your own countries, I wish you all a very safe and enjoyable journey. And now I'll finish, like I normally do, in the language of the Ngunnawal people, Ngana, Yarabai, Yangu, which means you're welcome to leave your footprints on our land, or in other words, again, welcome to Ngunnawal country. Thank you all.
For those of you who are here internationally, you may not be aware of the significance of a welcome to country. And so before I continue on with our formal proceedings this morning, I would like to thank Auntie Agnes very much and with heartfelt appreciation thank her for welcoming us to the land of the Ngunnawal people. Clapping sticks have travelled from conference to conference, starting in 2006 with the Larrakia people in the Darwin area and through many cities in the past 10 years. They return here to Canberra, the land of the Ngunnawal people. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and future, of the United Ngunnawal Elders Council. This is particularly relevant to be acknowledging that we are meeting on Ngunnawal land on the eve of NAIDOC Week for 2015. This acknowledgement is a symbol of AATE and ALEA's commitment to reconciliation and to demonstrate our respect for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people past, present and future. Our associations will continue to work with them to ensure a positive, literate future for all children and young people in Australia.
Welcome to the 2015 AATE ALEA Conference, National Conference. We're here. Thank you, Auntie Agnes, for your welcome to country, and the 2015 Conference Committee, in the spirit of reconciliation and being very conscious that we are meeting on Ngunnawal land, decided to explicitly include Aboriginal culture into our conference title and logo. We approached the United Ngunnawal Elders Council to add the words Ningi Wagu to our conference title, and we thank Auntie Agnes and the Council for their permission to use these words. We also thank Leah Bridson, our local artist and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Education Officer at Ngunnawal Primary School, one of our local primary schools, for her inspired design for the conference logo. The story of the logo is really interesting, and I encourage you all to look onto your conference app or onto your program to find out what it's all about. We are also selling the conference pins of Leah's artwork. I'm sporting one on my jacket here. And the profits of the pins will go to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. It is great that our conference can have a direct impact on the literacy opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students across Australia.
Today is the culmination of years of work by AATE, the ACT, Association for the Teaching of English, and the ACT ALEA committees. We are very excited that you're all here today to enjoy the hospitality of Canberra and our wonderful, refreshing and bracing climate. On a personal note, we have thoroughly enjoyed strengthening the links between our two associations, and it's been a privilege to work with such dedicated and hard-working people. We would like to acknowledge our partnership with the ACT Education and Training Directorate and their generous support both financially and in time for our teaching staff to organise the conference. We are pleased that our Director General, Diane, can be here with us this morning.
So, as you enjoy the conference over the next 3 days, we encourage you to be curious and take all opportunities to look and ask why. And echoing Auntie Agnes's words, Nagana Yarrabi Yangu, you are welcome to leave your footprints on our land.
As it is NAIDOC Week starting tomorrow, could I set you a challenge or a bit of homework for NAIDOC Week? Embarrassingly, I will admit that it wasn't until 10, 12 years ago that I discovered that, being a Central West New South Wales boy from Parkes, that the Wiradjuri people were the owners of the traditional land upon which I was born. So in various conferences that I've been to and presentations I've made, I've challenged the audience to go and find out who are the traditional owners of your land and connect. I think it's part of our journey. Okay, we now move on to Di Joseph. Di, I know, and I'm just embarrassed Di by saying that I did a bit of research last night on the internet, and I'll keep it legitimate, Di. Di was appointed as Director General of the Education and Training Directorate in 16th of August 2012. So in all accounts, I think we'd have to classify you as a stayer. I did find a record of an interview, and it said the following: although she no longer delivers learning experiences directly, Diane is adamant that she is still a teacher, helping to inform and influence what happens in the classroom, and we appreciate that in educational leaders. From a social point of view, we all come from somewhere else, and Di has come from Victoria, and as we were discussing this morning about the beautiful winter morning that we love the change of seasons here in Canberra, I quote the following: aside from her obvious passion for our education system, Diane is also a huge fan of our city. She's a keen cyclist and runner and loves to share the big sky beauty of our national environment and stable climate with visiting family and friends. And I think she's got a house full this weekend with grandchildren and whatever staying with them. Some of her favourite haunts, and I'll recommend these to you, include the Arboretum. If you get a chance, get up to the Arboretum. It is just an amazing place. The National Portrait Gallery, and somewhere called 38 Espresso on the Kingston foreshore for her daily coffee. Di.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and I'm glad you didn't find anything else on the internet that I didn't expect. A very, very warm welcome to all our delegates here this morning. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and acknowledge their contribution to the life and the learning of this city and this region. What a fantastic event. And having had a few meetings with the conference organising committee and conveners over the last couple of years, even for me, it is great to be here, not having really had much to do with it other than the meetings along the way and giving a little bit of financial support. But it is really, really a proud moment for Canberra education and training. This year there are over 1,390 delegates in attendance, and delegates have come from every state and territory in Australia, as well as from the US, New Zealand, Hong Kong and Fiji. So during your stay, really do take the opportunity to discover our national capital. Coming from Victoria 5.5 years ago, I'd been here 3 times before I moved up here to live here, and one of those times was for an interview. But I have had now the privilege to really discover Canberra. You've got to dig down a little bit, but it's really well worth discovering. It really is a privilege to participate in this English and Literacy Conference. I acknowledge the expertise that resides within our professional associations, and just reading the banners, there is something inspiring about professional associations that can work with schools, with professions, with departments, with government to really do our collective work in improving not just the outcomes in the classrooms, but the outcomes for the community, the economy and the nation. The work you do here, the rich professional learning, will make the difference, and ultimately a difference to students in our classrooms. This is what it is really all about. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge our VIPs. Robin Ewing, AM, President of ALEA. Gary Collins, President of AATE. Diane Barone, President-elect, International Literacy Association. Jane Taylor, President, New Zealand Literacy Association. So there were two little, I suppose, education things, and it's nice to do education on a Saturday. And I wasn't that sad to leave my 2 grandsons, their parents and my daughter and my husband in a 3-bedroom apartment this morning. So really what I wanted to share, that our task, and particularly from a Director General position, that what we really want to do is to make sure that the best practice in the best classroom becomes the norm for all classrooms. And so one of the quotes we're using here in a lot of our professional learning and our strategic planning is a quote from Hargraves and Fullan, that students do well when they have a series of very good teachers, not by chance, but by design. To me, this is what professional learning is all about. How do we make sure that the best practice in the best classroom does become the norm for all classrooms, not by chance, but by design? And that's where I see this conference as a very, very important part of that intentional and deliberate strategy to make sure that we can do that. So I really do acknowledge the organising committees, the ALEA and AATE for making this happen. The conference theme, and just terrific to hear about the history of where that came from. Ningi Wagu, look and ask why, nurturing inquiring minds. It really does provide an inspiring lens for delegates. So I hope you use that lens to explore how our schools, universities, national and state jurisdictions can support creativity, imagination and curiosity in the quest to make sure we get that best practice as the norm. I can see from reading the titles in the program that there certainly is a breadth and depth of learning that you will have the opportunity to be inspired by. And for me, the inspiration I take is the over 1,390 educators here to do that professional learning together, because it is through teachers teaching each other, teachers working with each other, teachers planning, evaluating and organising together, teachers learning together. That to me is part of the deliberate strategy in making sure we get that best practice as the norm. And then I'll just leave you with a final little quote, and I don't know if it's the quote that really stimulates me or that little boy in the middle there. Perhaps a bit of both. And this is where I really do pay tribute to having been able to be a teacher and a principal in schools, and then to become a Director General. For me, it is really, really important to remember what it feels like, and particularly by a Friday afternoon at the end of term. But what does it really feel like? And this quote from Macbeth and Galton: "What motivates educators to remain within the profession and to give their best is the buzz of a magic moment, when the penny finally drops, when the student's puzzled gaze gives way to a smile of recognition. It is these magic moments that teaching meets learning." I wish you all a successful and stimulating conference. I wish you the magic of it all, teaching meeting learning. It gives me great pleasure to formally open the 2015 AATE ALEA National English and Literacy Conference. Best wishes as you go through the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Di, for those wonderful words. And again, the conference committee would like to acknowledge the significant partnership that they have forged with the Directorate. Thank you for that. You're now free to rejoin the throng of family and have that coffee. I'd now like to introduce Gary Collins, who will introduce our opening plenary speaker, Douglas Fisher. Gary, some of you may know, some of you may not, but Gary is the current AATE president, one of the major partners in this conference. Gary is now a part-time teachers educator at the University of Queensland. He has taught secondary English for 35 years, mainly in Queensland, but also had the opportunity to teach in the United States and Canada. So Gary, welcome.
Thanks, Dennis. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. They've welcomed us to leave the marks of the passing of our feet. As Dennis has just told you, Gary Collins is my name. I'm to introduce our speaker and so kick off this day's game. I'm sorry to confess to you to rhyming couplets I'm addicted. Some solace is there are worse things with which to be afflicted. Today it is July the 4th, American Independence Day. It's therefore meet that our speaker hails from the US of A. Douglas Fisher from San Diego is this morning's plenary speaker on improving student learning, of which each one here is a seeker. Unleashing student potential is the topic he'll explore, of real bang for buck in teaching. I know we all want more. Doug Fisher is the bookend bloke. You'll hear him first and last. His abstract promises a talk that should really be a blast. For North American hearing, that last rhyme might need to change. From blast and last to blast and last, the vowels should rearrange. Of rhymes from me, that's quite enough. You don't need another measure. To present Professor Fisher to you is now my definite pleasure.
Good morning, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining the conference. Happy 4th of July to you. You're welcome. My name, my email, our website, and my Twitter handle. So if you want to talk to me after the session, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear comments, thoughts, reactions, requests for information. We host a YouTube channel, totally free. You can have at it. I'm stalling, so you will write. fisherandfry.com. I'm going to start this morning with a story from my own literacy development. My experiences across my career have helped me think about being a better teacher. A few years ago, I decided I would go back to school and learn about the human brain. Do you all know we're brain-based educators? We're obsessed with our brains. Unfortunately, throughout my college experience through the university, I never took a brain class. And I felt bad about that because I would go to these events and people would say to me, "That's brain-based." And I believed them, but I didn't know what they were talking about. And I felt guilty about that, so I decided in the summer, when I have a lot of free time, that I would go back to school after a long gap and take a new brain class. Do any of you go back to the university after a gap? It's hard to find the time to go back to college. My class was on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock until 9:40 p.m. My school day starts at 7:15. It was not convenient to be in class at 7:15 till 7 o'clock till 9:40, but I did it. That summer, I decided I would buy the book and read it, because I thought, I'm kind of busy in the fall. I should read the book in advance so I have a little bit more free time. Somites are blocks of dorsal mesodermal cells adjacent to the notochord during vertebrate organogenesis. This is from Chapter 1, Introduction. I closed the book. I am now a struggling reader. Are you now a struggling reader? We have made a mistake. We talk about children as if struggle is part of their identity, part of who they are. We start to label them, saying that kid is a struggling writer, a struggling reader, a struggling thinker. Struggling is situational. The teacher can create a situation in which the learner will struggle or succeed. I know I have the power to make kids struggle or succeed. The text is difficult, and there have been times in our profession in the area of literacy where we thought that a phonics approach was the answer to everything. There have been times where we thought a fluency approach was the answer to everything. There have been times where we thought comprehension was the answer to everything. We really didn't spend enough time saying what made the text complex in the first place, and what will the teacher do to provide access to this text for students. So I closed the book. I complained about it. I realized I was struggling, and I showed up for the first night of class, hoping my teacher would teach me. My teacher, about halfway through the class, said, "I don't know how you're going to learn this, but it's on the test." I showed up not knowing how I was going to learn it. Now my teacher doesn't know how I'm going to learn it either. This is a problem. I probably should have dropped out of that class, a graduate doctoral neuroanatomy class, for which I had no prerequisites. I probably should have dropped out. But I told everyone at the high school where I work that I was taking a brain class. I might have bragged a little bit, and I was too embarrassed to drop out. The next morning, after this night, I was talking to the team at school, my colleagues at school, saying, I can't figure out how to be successful. My teacher doesn't know how to teach us. I can't read the textbook. And one of my colleagues invited me to borrow a grade 10 biology book. There are 65 pages on the central nervous system in this book, and I can read a 10th grade textbook. And I learned about hemispheres and lobes and blood supply. And I went to that second week of class, and my teacher talked about lobes and hemispheres and the circle of Willis and blood supply and strokes, and I was right there with her, and it felt amazing. There's nothing that could have replaced that feeling for me. When you struggle through something and you finally get it, it feels fantastic. There were no stickers or stars or cupcake parties that would compensate for me feeling like I got it. That lasted about 15 minutes. The other 2 hours, I don't know what she talked about, but I tasted success and I wanted more. That night, on my way home, I thought to myself, I'm going to pull over, I'm going to go to a bookstore, and I'm going to find more things that I can read about the human brain, because it felt really good. So I'm going through the shelves at Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I stumble across this book. Now, I might have said some bad things about this series in the past, and I would like to take it back. This series works when you don't know a lot. The only other book I'd looked at in this series was on American literature. I actually know something about American literature. I teach American literature. I understand American literature, so that series wasn't that helpful. But when I didn't know a lot, when I didn't have a lot of background knowledge, that series helped a lot. I was on Amazon looking for more things to read, and I stumbled across this book, the #1 best-selling book for first-year medical students' neurology class in the world. $13.95, I can afford that. I click and buy this book. It comes to my house. It is 3 DVDs. You pop them in the computer. You hover the cursor over. It talks to you. It shows you images, post-mortem images, MRIs, cartoons, and it teaches you about the brain. It was a fantastic resource. I watched over 100 YouTube videos that semester. Doctors put brain surgery up on YouTube all the time. I know, gross, but true. Our public television published a 5-DVD series called The Secret Life of the Brain. I bought it, and I watched it all. I practiced on the internet every night, practicing my knowledge of neuroanatomy. And I will talk to anyone who will listen to me talk about the human brain. What I didn't tell you is on that first night of class, my teacher handed us the syllabus for the course. 16 weeks. There was a midterm and a final, and that is it. I was hoping for a paper. I'm a reasonably good writer. I could virtually go to the library, read some stuff, write a paper, get an A. But my teacher said midterm and final. The midterm comes. It is 17 pages long, single-spaced, 200 multiple-choice questions. I took the test. At the end of the evening, I handed the test back to my teacher, and I said to her out of my mouth, "This is the best example of total recall that I have ever seen." And my teacher said, "Thank you." And in my brain, not out of my mouth, I said, "That was not a compliment." I got a B+ on that test. I have never worked harder for anything in my entire life. I worked so hard to learn about the human brain. And as I did so, I kept thinking about what is it taking? What did I need from my teacher? What do I wish she would have done? Now, I learned a lot about neuroanatomy, but I learned even more about me as a learner and me as a teacher. You can't send kids home with books they cannot read and expect them to learn from them. We've made a mistake. We send kids home with things that are so hard for them, they can't read those books by themselves. They need instruction and support. I also know that talking to other people helps us learn things. Making sense, dialogic instruction. Build that curiosity as kids interact with one another. Unfortunately, my teacher never had us turn to a partner and talk. The 4 of you group up and process this, not a single time. But I know better, because learning is a social endeavor. I would send an email out to the 18 other students in the class, all of whom were full-time, unemployed doctoral students. I have a job. I would send an email to them every Monday night and say, if you meet me in the Commons at 5 o'clock, our class started at 7, if you meet me in the Commons at 5 o'clock, I will buy you whatever you want to eat or drink. I purchased a circle of friends for myself, and we talked every week about our learning. I was by far the lowest performing student in that class, and a huge part of my success was spending time talking to other people, asking questions, hearing their conversations. Being part of the discourse of the class helped me immensely. I also, as you probably noticed, read a lot of stuff. Reading widely builds my background knowledge. Reading widely builds my vocabulary. I needed to do that. And here's what I wish my teacher would have done. This is not rocket science. I wish she had a learning goal, or to translate that for you all, a learning intention. Is that familiar to you? I didn't just make this up, right? I wish she would say to us, here's what you need to know tonight. Here's what you should learn. I wish she had a way of checking for understanding. How did she know who was getting it, who wasn't getting it? That's not rocket science. I wish she provided us some feedback. Any evidence on feedback as an effective approach? Have any of you read, hi Heather, have any of you read John Hattie? Have you heard of him? Yeah, feedback works, right? How about aligning instruction to what she saw in our performance? This is not rocket science, it's just not done. What you heard the boss say this morning is, we want to take the best of what we know and make sure it happens in every single classroom. And before you get a little nervous that I'm talking bad about this teacher, let me give you a little background on her. She graduated from a school called Harvard. Have you heard of this school? She has a PhD in neurosciences. She knows a lot. She never took a single teaching methods class, undergraduate through graduate school. That's not her fault. We let her do this and become a teacher. And in the mindset of many people, politicians, academics, everyone can be a teacher. It's a hard job. And I don't think our communities always realize the science that is behind a good lesson, the hours of work you all do to make sure kids learn in amazing ways. So I helped her after the class was over and I got my A-. I said, could we have a meeting? And we started talking about what good teaching and learning looks like. She wasn't offended. She just had never been exposed to these ideas. And this is how I organized my conversation with her. What should be part of every single lesson that our kids experience? What will grow their minds? What will help them think? Every day, we should do all 4 of these things. In every lesson, and if you want more resources on this, go to the Fisher & Fry website to the resource tab. You'll find a ton of stuff. What I'm looking for is that some parts of every lesson, the teacher does a lot of work. And in some parts of every lesson, the students do a lot of work. Do you think that's fair? That kids would do that? Sometimes they do more work, sometimes we do more work? I think that's fair. I don't think this has to occur in any particular order. Because the graphic is so powerful, and it's in the national curriculum that you all know how to look at visual stuff. When you look at this, the graphic might imply that you must start with focus, then go guided, then go collaborative, then go independent. And I want to be really careful about that. You can start anywhere, as long as all 4 of these are present in the classroom. So let me go through these, then I'm going to talk about planning lessons. I'm going to start with collaborative so I don't reinforce starting at the top. Every day, students should work with each other in groups, talking to each other using academic language. Do you agree with that? Every single day, kids should have practice opportunities for language. In my school district, we say 50% of the instructional minutes averaged across a week are collaborative learning. That's how much talking we want from our students. Productive, collaborative conversations every single day. Every single day, they should engage in guided instruction. Prompting and cueing and questioning. We didn't make this up. We're just putting it in a model that helps teachers plan really good lessons. Guided instruction, prompting, cueing, and questioning. The risk we run as educators is when we call on a student and the answer is incorrect, we might tell them the answer. Have any of you done that? I have. What happens when you call on a student and you tell them the answer and you do that over and over and over again, you create learned helplessness. There's never been a child born in the history of the world with learned helplessness. It is always induced by well-meaning adults who rescue kids and don't require that they think. We have to get better at prompting and cueing and questioning. If I go to the top, focused instruction, that's about setting a clear learning purpose or learning intention or learning target or learning goal or objective, wherever you live, and modeling your thinking. I'm going to come back to that point in a little bit. And the last part, all the way to the bottom, kids should be asked to do things independently every day. I hope you don't think that's rocket science or brain surgery. It's just not happening everywhere in every classroom. And kids have the right to this. They have the right to a teacher who sets a clear learning intention. They have the right to a teacher who models his or her thinking. They have a right to a teacher who corrects the errors and misconceptions and allows them to collaborate together using academic language and then holds them accountable. That's what I'm looking for in the classroom. And to get that to happen, Did you make it? There we go. We've been building this instructional model called Unstoppable Learning. The 7 parts inside that model are really important if we're going to raise the rigor for our students. And we have to think of these as a system, because tinkering with one part of this is going to influence and impact all the other parts. If you change your assessment system, it will impact your planning. It'll impact your adapting. It'll impact how kids consolidate their understanding. If you change the management of your classroom, it'll impact their opportunities for collaborative learning. We have to think of this more as a system. And I think we've been doing a lot of parts work lately. We're going to do a workshop or a professional learning on just this little part or just this little part. And we're not seeing how the system plays together. I'm going to go through some of these pretty quickly, and others I'll linger a bit more. Let's start with planning, I hope. My clicker. There we go. I'll start with planning. Not a huge, sexy thing to talk about at a conference, but we all know it should happen. Planning is what happens backstage. Teachers should have plans. They should not plan in the shower in the morning on the way to school. They should actually know what they want kids to learn and do at the end. Hope is not a plan. We actually plan lessons. I'm going to leave it there and just say I trust you all, because you chose to be here, that you actually plan lessons. We ask a series of inquiry questions for people. Who are my students? How can I learn about them? What will I teach them? How will I plan the content that they need to learn? And how will the routines and procedures of the classroom support those learning environments? I'll leave it there and move to launching. Launching is a really important part of the lesson. How do we invite students into the learning? And you know this because you spend time reading John Hattie's work. What's the learning intention? The way we phrase it is, what am I learning today? And then the end, the success criteria, how will I know that I have learned it? In the middle where I live, we added a third part. Why am I learning this? Some of you and some of your colleagues teach boring things. Do you know that? Maybe not you personally, but at your school, someone is teaching boring things. I hope it's not boring to that teacher, because if it is, they should think about a new job. If it's not boring to them, part of their responsibility is to invite kids into that learning. Why am I learning this? The relevance, the interest. I say this a lot. If I were the Directorate General and I had the power to write a teacher job description, the very first line on the teacher's job description would say, make content interesting. I think it's the most important thing I do all day long. My kids, my students care about their English language arts because I care about it, and I care about their learning, and I care about what they're learning. We have to make sure that every single day when we launch the learning, kids know what they're supposed to learn, why they're supposed to learn it, and how they will know if they have learned it. I'm going to show you 2 very quick video clips from the same school on the same day. The first clip of these kids really have no idea what they're supposed to be learning. The second clip, they have a better sense. And I want to do a little compare-contrast about the importance of being clear about the learning targets when we launch our learning.
Why do you think that's important when you write, to have all these senses in there? Why does that help? I don't know. I think.
I never really thought about it. Set us up. Para aprender. We need to learn all of the physical properties that matter. Because we're gonna have a science test. We're gonna have a test. We need to memorize. I don't know. I never really thought about it.
And who are you writing this to? Who's going to get that paper that you're writing?
It's a field journalist.
Do you actually share that writing with anybody, or you just put it in your folder?
We just leave it in here.
Oh, very good. Why is it important to learn the word colossal or any of these other words in Wordly Wise?
We expand our vocabulary.
So why is that important? So you have a big vocabulary. Who cares?
Because it'll help us out later in life to get a job.
To get a job? Thanks.
I don't know. I never really thought about it. It also will help you in the future, like to get AP classes in high school and stuff.
Very good.
¿Estás aprendiendo esto por qué?
Para CSTs, para prepararnos para que cuando ya llegue van a venir preguntas así y estemos listos. And cut.
Okay, so why do we learn that?
Because it's the California standards.
That's a good.
¿Y para qué creen que es importante saber la geometría?
Para, ¿cómo se dice? Para poder...
¿No? ¿Qué te imaginas tú para qué?
Why do we do summary writing? What's the point of that?
To practice.
Yeah, definitely for practice. Why do you write about the 5 senses? Why is that important?
Remember we talked, there's no watermelons in the rainforest. How about
Why do we learn that? Why is that important?
That made it easy.
What's up? You guys want to help?
Really thought about it.
I like those last two girls. Maybe if we turn away, they'll go away. Again, same school, same day. The second group of kids had a better sense of what they were supposed to be learning and why.
Well, why do we learn similes? Why do you think?
To make your stories more entertaining.
Very good. So why do you think the teacher makes you do this? What's the point?
So we understand how to like draw conclusions and stuff like that.
Entonces, ¿por qué es importante saber esto?
Para que sabemos cuáles son abiertas y cuáles son cerradas.
Doing vocabulary like this.
To show our understanding of vocabulary words and or criteria.
And why do you think that's important to learn more vocabulary?
Well, it widens your vocabulary, and therefore widens your understanding of complex literature.
Not bad. Not. We do main idea and details. What's the point of that? Why do you do that?
We do it because so we could know what main ideas are and topics are.
Learning that because we're scientists and we're trying to learn what the properties of an apple is and to figure out what you can describe it about.
Okay.
Because it describes the paragraph more and it takes out all the things that don't really care.
Very well said. And last question. What do you?
Quiero preguntarles para qué es importante saber la sílaba tónica.
Porque no lo puedes decir como feria, porque luego el señor dice ¿qué?
Entonces el saber la sílaba
Pegajosa, pegajosa, pegajosa.
¿Eso qué es? ¿Qué es lo que acabas de hacer?
Es para mirar cuántas sílabas tienen como pegajosa, pegajosa, pegajosa y dicen cuántas sílabas tienen.
¿Por qué es importante saber las sílabas?
Porque necesitas saberlo para poder ser bien de escritoria.
Why is it important to have adjectives?
Because if you only say like, they will be trees, it wouldn't be a really good story.
Same school on the same day. Now add that up times another 180 days. Some kids have no idea what they're learning, what they're supposed to be learning, why they're learning it, and some kids do. And so we said to the faculty that afternoon, are we structuring inequality? Are we contributing to the lack of achievement of kids because we were not clear about what we wanted them to learn, and their little brains weren't paying attention to things that were valuable and important? I'm going to invite you to a 2-minute conversation to your partner around you. What is the importance of having a clear launch to learn, to invite kids into learning? Here's what I'm learning, here's why, and here's how I'll know I learned it. Turn your heads, move your mouths. Thank you. Allow me to interrupt you. Thank you. On your to-do list for today, we're going to write down the first thing, purpose-driven instruction. If that's one thing you learn from this, and you already know it, but if you learn and commit to it, that your students have a right to know what they're supposed to be learning. I know John Hattie frames it as a research issue. I'm going to frame it as a students' rights issue. Students have the right to know what we want them to learn, because we are going to judge their performance and put marks in their record that will last their lifetime. It is not fair to do that if they don't know what they were supposed to learn. We then have to think about the inputs and outputs. So we've launched them, they're interested, they know what they're supposed to be learning. What's the input we're going to give them? Is it digital? Is it print? Is it an adult? Is it a peer? What will they do with that? And then what are we going to ask as the output? One of the very effective ways to get stuff into kids' minds is to model. We have to be modeling for students. We have to open up our brains because thinking is invisible. The only thing we have is talking about our thinking. Teacher modeling matters. When I look at literacy, reading, print kinds of things, internet kinds of things, there are some areas that work for teacher modeling. We could model our own comprehension. I could say something like, I can make the following prediction, blah, blah, blah. We could do summarizing, we could visualize, we could ask questions, we could think about our own comprehension. We could also model word solving. What to do when you come to an unknown word. How did you use word parts, prefixes and suffixes, roots, baits, cognates? How did you use context clues? How did you figure out those unknown words? We could also model our understanding of text structures. How did the author put this text together internally? We could also model text features, graphs and diagrams and charts and bold words. We can open up our brains. When I look at modeling, I'm looking for two specific teacher behaviors. Number one is an I statement, not a you statement, not a we statement. I can make the following prediction. I noticed this word. I was thinking about cause and effect in this text. It's an I statement. And number two, metacognition, because or why or how. I can make the following prediction because the author told me X. I can visualize this in my mind because of these three words. That's what modeling sounds like. I statements and metacognition. Now I'm going to get you to practice on a piece of text. It's published in Discover magazine, which is an international magazine that publishes factual information. The title of the article is What Happened to Phineas. Attend the tale of Phineas Gage. Honest, well-liked by friends and fellow workers on the Rutland and Burlington railroads, Gage was a young man of exemplary character and promise until one day in September 1848. While tamping down the blasting powder for a dynamite charge, Gage inadvertently sparked an explosion. The inch-thick tamping rod rocketed through his cheek, obliterating his left eye and his way through his brain and out the top of his skull. To a partner. Now, in your partnership, one of you is sitting closer to this wall, and one of you is sitting closer to this wall. So in your partnership, the person who's sitting closer to this wall is going to be the speaker. The person who's sitting closer to this wall is the listener. Now, I see every once in a while there's a little triad. You don't have to call me over. You can always have one triad, okay? But I really want partners. This wall person is the speaker. I would model X because, here's my example. I would model predicting because I think he's going to die from this injury. Now, you can't use that one. This wall partner, make some sort of modeling. Remember, you can do comprehension, word solving, text structures, or text features. What would you model? What could you model off of this text? Go. Thank you. The one sentence. Thank you. Are there opportunities to model comprehension? Yes. Are there opportunities to model word solving in here? Yes. Are there opportunities to model text structure in here? Kind of. It might be problem and solution or cause and effect. We're not totally sure yet. If I went to disciplinary literacy, is there a difference in how an English language arts English teacher would think about this text versus a history teacher versus a science teacher? Because our disciplines come through, right? We have some generic approaches like comprehension and word solving, and then we have some more disciplinary perspectives. As an English teacher, the first sentence bothers me a lot. It sounds like a tall tale, and the genre of tall tale is exaggeration. But the source of this article is supposed to be informational, so it's throwing me off. It also should say, attend to the tale, and that annoys me, the grammar, that that's not correct. So, enough of my English. So, next paragraph. The rod landed several yards away, and Gage fell back in a convulsive heap. Yet a moment later, he stood up and spoke. His fellow workers watched aghast, then drove him by ox cart to a hotel where a local doctor, one John Harlow, dressed his wounds. As Harlow stuck his index fingers in the holes in Gage's face and head, you're welcome, until their tips met, the young man inquired when he would be able to return to work. This wall partner, I know yuck is one of the things, I know, but it's important history we're going to learn here in a minute. This wall partner, what could you model off of the second paragraph? Turn and talk. Thank you. Allow me to interrupt you. Thank you. Again, lots of potential for modeling, right? Text have to be analyzed. What do my students need to hear, and what does this text offer in terms of modeling? That's the planning process. I chose this text because I want to teach certain things. It has potential. Third paragraph, within 2 months, the physical organism that was Phineas Gage had completely recovered. He could walk, speak, and demonstrate normal awareness of his surroundings. But the character of the man did not survive the tamping rod's journey through his brain. In place of the diligent, dependable worker stood a foul-mouthed and ill-mannered liar given to extravagant schemes that were never followed through. Gage said his friends was no longer Gage. If I could call the author right now, I have a couple questions. 3 paragraphs in, I want the Damasios, that's the author, I want them to tell me this. How did this guy Phineas survive a penetrating brain injury? From what I know, if it goes through your brain, it should kill you. Did it not really go through his brain? Does he have some sort of miracle man? Why did he live? And number 2, for how much longer did he live? You told me in the beginning, I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those cases where it's 24 hours, we can't explain how the person survived. But in the last paragraph, you told me 2 months later, he's up and walking around. So how much longer did this guy live? This wall partner, could you turn and ask your partner a good question that you want the author to answer next? What's on your mind? What's driving you? What do you want to know next from this text? Ask that question. Thank you. And right now here, I hope I have nurtured some inquiry, some curiosity. And some of you, I can see your devices out, you're already looking little things up. You can't wait to find the answers to these research questions that you have. That's what we should be doing for students. We model our thinking so that they can try things on, things they care about, things they want to learn about, things that they will be self-directed to go find more information about. Now, if you don't like the yucky part so far, the next 2 slides are worse. But it's important. So that was 1848. This is 2004. This miracle man survives a fall on an 18-inch drill bit. I know, gross, but it's important. He's alive, and he's fine other than a personality change. This happened in Truckee, California, which is in the Reno area, Tahoe area. You have another speaker here at the conference from this area, Diane here. You'll learn about this guy. He's super important because he survived it, and he had the same personality changes as Phineas Gage in 1848. Ill-mannered, liar, compulsive gambler, very foul-mouthed, none of which were happening before this injury. Okay, now here's the gross one. This guy named Patrick is nail gunning the floor. He loses one of the nails, but doesn't notice it until 6 days later when he has a toothache. Because he damaged his prefrontal cortex, the executive reasoning area of the brain. And guess what? He's alive, he's fine, and his personality changed. Compulsive liar, compulsive gambler, very foul-mouthed. I'm learning a lot about what it takes, what happens in the brain, and what happens to our behavior. If you're interested in this, there's an amazing book on. It's written for kids around grade 6. Phineas Gage, A Gruesome But True Story About Brain Science. It tells the history of this man who changed the world's knowledge of neurology. Every neurology book around the world has the story of Phineas Gage. He's the first person in the world where we had proof that there was localized brain function, now widely accepted. Different parts of our brain do different things because of this unfortunate man's injury. The railroad rod that went through it, his head is 13 feet long. It was so, if you're worried, it was so hot that it perfectly cauterized all the way through. You could survive the injury, we have proof of that. You couldn't survive the infection. His doctor, John Harlow, probably did not wash his hands before sticking them in the holes because we didn't understand germ theory back then. We didn't have hospitals yet. I tell you this, and you should see yourselves. Some of you are leaning forward. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Some of you are turning slightly to the side but still watching. Some of you have hands up. Some of you are whispering to each other, is this real? Is he really doing this at a literacy conference? This is not a science conference. We are not here for science. You're processing. This is what modeling should feel like. It should allow you to suspend all the other things that are happening in your life and pay attention. That's what good modeling feels like. I hope you felt that on this text. I hope you felt inquiry, a little disgust, and still interested, and you want to know more. That's what good modeling does for us. It invites learners into a cognitive process that they're going to try on their own. And they're going to be creating, inspired, and wondering. And they're going to go out to the internet, and they're going to go find more things to learn. Once we have that learning launched, we have to provide students with opportunities to consolidate their understanding. They cannot be asked to apply things that they didn't have some chances to consolidate, to hold deep. It's that black box between the input and the output where kids consolidate. It's this opportunity to do something with the ideas, the information, the knowledge before they're expected to produce something. I am very interested in the idea of rigor and how to maintain a rigorous classroom. And I think rigor is a balance between difficulty and complexity. And I do worry that some places simply make learning more difficult, more work, more effort. And I think learning should be more complex, take more steps, require more thinking, require more activation of knowledge. I hope we don't just say 5 more pages, 9 more problems. That makes it more work, not necessarily more complex. We've been working on this in my school district. There's not a bad place to be on this, but we do notice a gap that lots of classrooms don't end up with tasks and assignments that are highly complex and difficult. Now, I want to make sure we don't leave here thinking that I want to eliminate low complexity, low difficulty tasks. Those tasks, low, build fluency and automaticity. They are important, but they are not everything we need to do to consolidate learning. Some of you are taking notes. Some of you are taking pictures. All of that is a low difficulty, low complexity task. It's not unimportant. It's just not very complex. If you were to go back and use this after the break and you come back to school and you look at your notes again and you design some lessons, I would say it's still not difficult, but it's more complex when you take the information today. We have to think about what tasks and assignments we gave our students that reach into the highly difficult, highly complex. And what did we do for our students that built their fluency and their automaticity? And where did we exercise their grit, their stamina, their perseverance? And where did we exercise their thinking processes? 1 minute to process this information, complexity versus difficulty. I'll put the definitions back up. Talk to each other. What are you making sense of this? How are you making sense of this? Apparently not. There we go. Thank you. We could spend the entire workshop just talking about analyzing tasks that are either difficult or complex or both. We're not going to, but you could, over the next couple days, think through the kinds of tasks you think students should be engaged in. When do they get an opportunity to consolidate their understanding in a complex task? When do they get opportunities to apply their learning in more less than difficult tasks? This is an important conversation we need to have if we want to raise our expectations for students. We have to reach into those more complex areas. We want to do a little bit of work on assessing. So now we've done some teaching, we've done some planning, we've launched the learning, we've given kids opportunities to consolidate, and there's all kinds of ways to check for understanding. There are all kinds of ways. I'm currently using Plickers. Have any of you seen Plickers? Are you in love with Plickers? You don't know what Plickers are. You can print them free. You can sign up. Each kid gets one. They're individually numbered. If they hold it in this direction, it's A, B, C, D. And you take your smartphone or your tablet with the camera on. You go shh, like this in the classroom, and it shows you all the answers that the kids did. Yes, it's true. I didn't just make it up. It's not magic. It exists. It's called Plickers. It's amazing. Kids just hold the card up in position A or B or C. The camera reads it quickly. It's a great way to check for understanding. How many kids chose A, how many chose B, how many chose C, how many chose D. It will tell you instantly. That's a rapid way. You could have them go, I get it, I don't really get it, I totally don't get it. I mean, there are low-tech ones and high-tech ones. We know so much about how to check for understanding. There's not a dearth of information around good ways to get teachers to check for understanding. The harder part is what you do with it once you collect the information. I want to give you a couple examples of checking for understanding. One that I particularly like is called generative sentences. This works for me. You give students a word, you ask them to put that word in a specific place in a sentence, and it shows you their vocabulary knowledge and their control of grammar. For example, volcanoes in the 4th position. Does this girl know something about volcanoes? Does she need some work on the awkwardness of her sentence? She's an English learner. Yeah? Did you learn something about this kid from asking the kid to write a sentence? Now I could write 3 or 4 more and I would know a lot about, if I said cinder cone in the 5th position, I could learn a lot about the kid's understanding. Another boy in the class wrote this. I know something about him. Here's one for you to try. On a scrap piece of paper somewhere, please write the word sell with that spelling in the third position of a sentence that is more than 6 words long, 7 or more. Do you all notice you're all working? Do you all notice you're thinking about vocabulary words? Do you notice that you're trying to figure out some grammar constructs around this? Some of you are trying to be silly a little bit, and you're talking about jail cells. I know. Some of the older people are writing cell phones. Some of you are doing plant cells and animal cells and human cells. It got you to think about a word, to think about the range of meanings of those words, and to figure out how to control the grammar around that word. It's a simple way to check for understanding that tells me a lot. I do 5 of these a day on the target vocabulary word, and I get a sense of what students know and what I still need to teach. I'm going to show you 2 more examples just to make a point. I could have you write a sentence with because in the first position that's a sentence that's fewer than 10 words long. And a whole bunch of you don't like that because you believe that in English we cannot start a sentence with because. But we had a vote, and the vote won. Modern Language Association says we can start a sentence with the word because provided there's a comma in the sentence somewhere. Because I said so is a fragment. Because I said so, comma, that's why period is a sentence. That's the new rule. How about the word Constitution capitalized in the last position of a sentence exactly 10 words long? That's hard, by the way, and it will show you what kids understand. For those of you who teach younger kids, how about thinking of a word that has 2 letters that are the same next to each other? Take that word and put it in the 4th position of a sentence. There's all kinds of ways to modify this. It's a great way to check vocabulary knowledge without having to go buy something from somebody else to sell you. Another way to think about this, another way to check for understanding is through the questions we ask kids. I've done a lot of work on questioning of late. There's a lot of stuff on our website about questioning. I think the questioning should go on a journey from the literal to the structural to the inferential. That we should take our readers on a journey. When we ask them questions, we first check in at their literal level understanding of a text. And some principals get really mad at me about this and say, I don't want you spending time at the literal level, it's a waste of time. And I have argued that it is unfair to ask a kid to make a logical inference if they don't know what the text says at the surface level. You might not have to linger very long at the literal level if the kids get it quickly. Move to the structural level. Move to the inferential level. The content of the questions, what you will see if you come to our school district is, around the rooms you'll see signs that say, what does the text say? How does the text work? What does the text mean? It's a habit we're trying to develop slowly with kids that as they read, they ask themselves these questions. What did it say? That's what the author said. How did it work? What did the author do to be able to say that? What's the author's craft, the author's purpose? And then, what does it mean? Where I go a little beyond the text to figure out what it means and what it means to me and what's the argument I can make. That's what we're trying to do with our checking for understanding, is be more systematic with the kinds of questions we ask, that the questions serve a journey, a progression, a scaffold from the literal to the structural to the inferential. Again, tons more information on our website. I'm going to show you a quick example. I love this book. Do any of you know this book, The Day the Crayons Quit? Do you love this book? Isn't it the silliest book ever? And super fun. One of the reasons I like it, I don't know what grade it belongs in. With my 9th graders last year, I used this book to introduce, the first day, ethos, logos, and pathos. And we went back and analyzed each letter and the argument inside the letter. Did the crayon use ethos or logos or pathos? The questions I'm going to show you are from kindergarten classroom. You call them kindies, right? Do you say that, kindies? You know, I don't always know if I'm right when I shorten a word. So, kindies. What did Duncan find when he took the crayons out of the box one day? Super low level, right? Is it important that the 5-year-olds know that it's a series of letters? Each letter is written by a different crayon, therefore it has a different voice and a different perspective? If they don't get that, they've misunderstood the genre, the structure. By the way, the genre is epistolary. Do you like that word? I love saying that word. It's an epistolary, which just means a collection of letters. Which crayons feel tired and overworked? If you don't know the book, red crayon says, why do you keep making me work all the holidays? You don't even pay overtime for all these hearts and Santa Claus I have to draw. Gray crayon says, why is everything in the world that is gray so big? You keep using me up. Find something that's small. Yellow and orange are arguing about which is the better color of the sun. There are lots of details. For us in our state standards, the kindergartners focus on details. They have to learn to pay attention to details in a text. That's a very clear expectation in our standards. What is gray crayon thinking, beige crayon thinking, blue crayon thinking, red crayon thinking, etc. Which crayons appear sad or embarrassed, and how can you tell? Those words are not in the book. You have to use the visual information to support kids. Tan crayon, the one on the left, says, the only thing you've drawn with me, Duncan, is wheat. There's not a big calling for wheat. Peach crayon says, Duncan, you ripped my wrapper off, and now I am naked and I am never coming out of the crayon box again. And this is what this kindergarten teacher did. The first day they went through the book and they looked at it at a very literal level. On the second day they come back in and she's asking them a question. How does Duncan respond to the letters? And there's this 2-page illustration. Pink crayon, by the way, had said to Duncan, you have never used me. You've never drawn a single thing with me. You think I am a girl crayon. What she means is you're a sexist pig and it's not fair. She doesn't say that. She's more polite than that. And gray crayon, remember, said stop drawing such big things. So the kindergartners are looking for details from the letters to go back into his drawing to see if he responds. He does not respond to all of the complaints. He responds to some of the complaints. So we're going to watch 2 minutes of a kindergarten classroom talking about this text. Why isn't she talking?
And we know that each of these crayons has what?
A different problem.
A different problem with Duncan, right? Okay.
One of them doesn't.
One crayon doesn't have a problem with Duncan, and we're going to talk about that. You're right. Let's go ahead and review what these crayons have a problem with. Are you ready?
Yes.
What's the problem with the red crayon? Sierra?
He does all of the holidays and he works too much on holidays.
He works too hard. He works on holidays. He says he needs a what?
Rest.
He needs a rest. That's right. What about the gray crayon? Claire?
He's drawing too much big things.
Yeah. Like what? Give me an example.
Like he's drawing big elephants and rhinos.
In rhinos, that's right.
And hippos.
And hippos. And he says he wants to color something small. What about blue crayon? What's up with blue crayon, Elvira?
Because he is sorry because he is overused. He needs a break.
He needs a break, and he's stubby. I love that you used that word from the text. What does stubby mean? What does stubby mean? Stubby means what? Audrey, what does it mean?
It means that you're kind of like getting small and big.
Okay, so we have done a really good job with determining what's the problem. We've been finding evidence of what the problem is. We are going to do another close reading today. And remember, you can close read text or pictures. I want to go over what our goals for close reading are. Remember, on the first time we read text or look at a picture, we know some, we know a little. The second time we read it, we know more. What about the third time?
We understand. We go crazy.
We go crazy. The light bulb goes crazy. We completely understand. So, we're going to go into this text again, and we are going to do a close read on how Duncan helps solve some of these problems. What are we looking for in the book?
Evidence.
Okay.
I'll stop her there.
We have been working with the...
I'll stop her there. It's on YouTube if you want to watch more. After that lesson, the next question, so we go through, what does the text say? How does the text work? What does the text mean? The next question is, what does the text inspire me to do? We want our readers to be inspired to take action based on the things they read. And we open it up. Some kids might do a presentation. Some kids might have a debate. Some kids might want to write something. Some kids might want to engage in a Socratic seminar where they talk about a big idea. Some kids might want to do further research and investigation. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to give them a test because there's a state expectation. Do you ever give a state test? No nap plan here, right? So every once in a while we practice a test. That's not my point. My point is we can open it up and let kids be inspired to take action based on the text they read. In that kindergarten classroom, if you finished watching that video, different kids chose to do different things based on the crayon book. A group of boys ran back to the desktops at the back. They typed the word sun in the search engine. They hit images, and they started printing paper, yellow paper. Here's a yellow sun, here's a yellow sun, here's a red, here's a red, here's a yellow, here's a weird color, here's a yellow. And they had a debate on which was the correct color of the sun. I think that's really cool for 5-year-olds to take action in that way. Another girl wrote this. If you don't speak kindergarten, I've translated it on the side. Dear Green, I made yellow and orange's problem go away because I am a good problem solver. She's 5 years old. She's the only one who did this. A group of kids wanted to know about the author. Their specific research question was, has Drew Daywalt written additional books? The answer is no. But they found his author page, and on his author page, on their iPads, I was reading it to them because they couldn't read the author page, it said, I was raised in a fun house. Sounds weird, doesn't it? Period. Literally, period. My parents owned a traveling circus. Some days I woke up and looked in the fat mirror, other days the skinny mirror. The 5-year-olds all want to know what this is. So we went on the App Store and we found an app that will turn your iPad into a funhouse mirror, which turned into a whole investigation about how that worked. I was so impressed with these 5-year-olds because each of them chose actions. One of the girls ran off saying, I'm going to write my own book. And we assumed it would be a book about crayons, but it wasn't. She wrote a 4-page book. Her book was What My Shoes Would Say to Me. She's 5. Because we opened the door up a little bit and we said, you can be inspired by the things you read. You don't have to do the same thing as everyone else in the class. Creativity, innovation, inquiry, curiosity. That's what we're trying to build in our readers. Couple more points, and then I say have morning tea. When we collect assessment information, we have to adapt the learning.
I figure 75% to you, Panma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Yida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm a pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25... 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Really, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No. Look, Ma. Look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
And we've all had that day, right? Feedback is different from feed forward. I know you already know that. making sure we take action and teach things differently based on the assessment. We have to differentiate what we're looking for. How do we get kids into the learning environment? And we build accommodations, better access for students. We build modifications because they deserve it. And accommodations and modifications are only as good as the curriculum they were designed from. Accommodations and modifications, differentiation, cannot compensate for bad lessons. They don't make the lesson better. We have to have really good systems of support to create those accommodations and modifications. The last part I'm going to talk about is managing the learning environment. I'm not going to spend very many minutes on this. I just hope we don't see this. We got to get past this. Kids want to be part of a classroom. I also think we need to get past this. There is no magic cookbook for running a classroom. It's about relationships we have with students. It's about choosing when to intervene. It's not as simple as saying, here's a quick cookbook to manage a classroom. We have to build routines and procedures in our students so they know what is expected. We have to know when to intervene with their behavior and when not to intervene with their behavior. We have to make those choices. We have to recognize that behavior is speaking to us. When kids misbehave, it's communication. What do they want, or what are they trying to avoid? We have to listen to that because they're trying to tell us something. And we're all leaders because every teacher is a leader. And we can plan way better lessons that get kids to think in deep ways about what they're learning. And they don't have to produce the same thing as everybody else. We can foster their curiosity, their entrepreneurial spirit, their innovation, and their creativity. Thank you all for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Douglas, I'm Robin Ewing, ALEA's president, and I can't think of a more inspiring way for us to begin our conference. I'm sure you could see, as I could, how much what you said resonated with us. But at the same time, you encouraged us to take heart and to continue to inspire children rather than limit them by some of the rigid structures and expectations that sadly are not just happening in Australia but in lots of Western education systems. So thank you so much for encouraging us to nurture the creativity, imagination and curiosity of our students.